Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff and another first impressions video, and today we're looking at Airfix's brand new, totally new tool, the Havilland Mosquito. And the big question is, have Airfix managed to turn the wooden wonder into a plastic wonder? Right, so this kit has literally been out a few days and it has just landed on my doorstep, and I have not really looked in the box other than to just check nothing was damaged. So we'll have a quick look at the box to start with. So, usual affair on the front, we've got the usual red box and the two depictions of the paint options inside. The kit number is A04023, and we've got this lovely sunset or sunrise picture of the mosquito in flight. That looks very nice indeed. Both the ends are the same as each other, and then on this side we have a little bit of history. Tells you about the two different paint markings. So number 571 Squadron, Pathfinder Group, 1944, and number 109 Squadron, Royal Air Force, 1944. So they're both 1944 versions. It's a skill level 2, comes with 2 flying hours, and as always gives you your little list of paints. Let's take a look inside. So inside the box we have our sheet of decals, which we'll look at more closely in a moment. We have the now familiar instruction book. We have a single bag with all the sprues in and a separate bag with the clear parts in. So the standard approach from Airfix for its smaller kits. So on the front cover we have the usual approach of a little bit of a potted history in 3 different languages in this case, and then some specifications. And then at the bottom there it gives you that little for best results spiel about washing your parts. And then as usual we have a couple more languages. Then we have the assembly instructions and the key. That takes us then to step 1. So we're starting with the cockpit build at step 1, which is no real surprise, as that's how most aircraft begin. There seems to be quite a lot of parts actually building up into this. We've got separate parts for the radio set, and then as we move down to step 5 we appear to be building up the seat. So we've got the seat back and the base there with the pads moulded on, and then we've got the side pieces separately with the arms, so that builds up quite nicely. And the now familiar little red areas to show you what was put on last. Then we've got all the flight gauges, and that appears to have a decal, and it also looks like we've got the backs of the dials, so that's nice. I'm not sure how visible that will be, but if you're wanting to put cables coming from the back, then you've got that opportunity possibly. Then we've got the control stick there. I'm not quite sure what that is. So we're at step 10 just on the first page. So step 11 is dealing with areas underneath the cockpit floor. So there's stuff going in into the cockpit, and there's stuff going in underneath. And that looks like it's forming the edge of a bomb bay. We've got the first fuselage half, and I note that they're using that donut fitting, which I like. It's a good way of locating the parts. But it looks like we've got pegs as well, so we've also got location pins. We've got a separate bulkhead here which blanks off the area for the tail wheel, so that's really nice. That's a lovely detail. And then we can see the second part of the fuselage going together with the wing spars sticking out, so that all looks nice and clear. And as we flip over, so we've got a clear part by the looks of it going into the underside there, so you've got that little viewing port which goes in there, and we've got some other items that are going into the underside of the fuselage again. Not quite sure, but it looks like you've got two parts going in there and then another one going in the top of the fuselage. So possibly for different options, I don't know, in the fullness of time. Then we're building up the tail assembly. So we've got a single piece there which goes onto the actual back of the tail, and then these are made up of two separate parts, but seem to join along what would have been a panel line. So that's interesting as well. It's not just a top and a bottom. We'll have a look when we see the parts in a minute. So we're at step 21 by the time we're on the end of page 5. Right. Oh, we've now got purple. I'm not sure that I've seen purple in Airfix instructions before. Right, so building up the landing gear. It's nice to see this being built up of multiple parts, and actually that looks quite delicate for the scale. Just a reminder, it's 1/72 scale. Use part B6 as a jig, do not glue. Okay, so B6. Oh, right, okay. So there is a jig there for building up the landing gear. Oh, that's good. That's really good. So you've got to make sure that everything's nice and square. Yeah, use part B6 as a jig. Do not glue. So that's what those purple areas are. So it looks like a part of the aircraft. Initially, so it looks like a part of the air. I mean, that looks like part of the wing or something. So it underneath the engine nacelle. So it looks like you're using it as a jig before you come to actually attach the parts. So that's interesting. We've got the little mud flaps going on. They look like they might be a little bit on the thick side, but we'll have a look. And then we've got what looks like the fuel tank, or a fuel tank going in behind there, or don't know, maybe it's part of the mechanisms. Right, step 29, and that's wheels. So we've got two wheel halves, and actually they look like they're weighted from the pictures. I'll just show you. You can see they're weighted, and also that they're separate hubs. So you'll be able to paint the hubs separately and then put them in. So that's always a nice touch. Then we're attaching them into the assembly. So that looks quite complex, really, doesn't it, for 172? It'd be interesting to see how they've pulled that off. Then we're on the wing. We've got a little bit of drilling to do. They've kindly told us what diameter drill bit to use. And then it says see step 106 on page 18. So I'm guessing that's to do with whether you're interested in putting certain ordnance on the wing. Then we've got, that looks like the tip of the wing might be a clear part. That's interesting as well. So that you'll have clear lights already mounted into the tail. Okay. Two wing halves go together. Oh, look at this. Right, let me get you close to this. So the exhaust stack there is made up of 2 parts. So that means it's going to be a lot easier to get in and clean up any seams. And yeah, that should look really nice actually. Well, I like that. Seems to mount into this block. 2 parts go together, mount in the block, and then the block mounts into the engine. I like that. I like that. I've not seen that before, I don't think. Okay. Step 38, so we're repeating that on the other side. Step 41, and we're starting to build up the internals of the engine compartment there. So we've got bulkheads for where the landing gear is going to go. We've got the spinner there for the propellers being put in. So similar system that they used on their new 172 Spitfire, which isn't a surprise because it's the same designer. Then we've got air scoops going in. What's this? Right. Then we've got the silhouettes. So it's telling you that you need to remove these if you're doing landing gear up. And then if you're landing gear down, clearly you leave them on. Oh, this is lovely. Look at this. We've got what looks like a plastic part that plugs into the underside of the landing gear, and it says mask. Do not glue part F53. Use as a mask to protect the inside of the nacelle when painting the entire aircraft. Fantastic. Wow, okay, this kit's blowing me away. I've not even looked at the plastic. That's amazing. That's just such a good idea. Absolutely brilliant. Then we've got a separate radiator which is being slid into the wing section there. So that'll look nice and authentic. I can't get over that, that's brilliant. Okay, step 52, and the gear is being placed into the engine nacelles at this stage. Doesn't it look nice? Can't wait to see these plastic parts in a moment. The doors look like they've got detail on them, so that's good. Then we've got the propellers being built up, so spinner goes over the blades, and then the whole assembly mounts onto that little spinner that we've previously mounted, so they will be movable. Step 57, and once again we're building gear up and using a jig. Yeah, just like we've done before. So we seem to be going through the same steps as we've done before, but now for the other wing. So obviously it's a twin aircraft, twin engine aircraft. So looking at these steps, it's exactly what we've just done through before, but they're taking you through it for each side. So that is really nice. It's not, they're not just saying make 2 of, they're showing you specifically. And I love that mask. Okay, so we're now at step, get this, 93 of this 172 scale aircraft. And yeah, we we have an option of an open bomb bay on a 172 scale aircraft. It's not a big aircraft really, you know, it's not like it's the Wellington or the Lancaster. It's not a big aircraft, and we've got an engine, a bomb bay, and it looks very detailed from the pictures at least. So we're now building up some structure in there. So those are your bomb bay door openers. and it seems to be telling you here not to put a round pin in a square hole, which is handy. So we've got the bomb rack mounts. Shows you the position as you look. It shows you what angle they should be at, so that's really nice. They're thinking about the modeler. The designer of this builds models, so he is a modeler too. Always helpful. We've got a separate ring on the tail of the bombs. So Airfix often do the ring moulded in, and it can get a bit flashy and a bit heavy. But they've done that separately now, so that's nice. We've got decals going on already, so that will make them look quite special, I would think. Yeah, that all looks very nice. Then we have some underwing bulges. So I'm not sure if they are like extra fuel tanks or something like that. I'm no expert on the Mosquito. Then we have the pilot going in, so almost at the end, and we're building up the canopy. So looks like it's a 3-piece canopy, and then we've got the glazing that goes in on the nose, so the clear part of the front and those 2 side pieces, which it's nice that they go in from the outside. Then we've got an option on the tail wheel, which is up or down, and it shows you again what that should look like inside the fuselage. So I really like that. And then we've got what I think is the pitot tube going into the tail, and that completes the build at 112 steps. Wow. Okay, let's look at the paint scheme. So the paint scheme is like this. It is the sort of standard camouflage colours, if you like, with a solid underneath. Squadron number 8 Pathfinder Group, Royal Air Force, Oakington, don't know where that is, Cambridgeshire, England, September 1944. And she has blue spinners there. That's quite a nice little paint scheme. And then there's a research note there. Let me just read that out to you. When ML963 was photographed in September 1944, the aircraft had just returned from repairs at Hatfield. This is evident from a replacement panel in grey on port upper wing and no step markings above the radiators on both wings, repainted in what appears to be ocean grey. The spinners appear to be a mid-blue, not unlike PRU blue. Okay, interesting. And then the other paint scheme, which is the one I will be doing, is number 109 Squadron, Royal Air Force, Wyton, Cambridgeshire, England, 1944. Nice black underneath. I do like the night fighter, night bomber colours. You've got the decal markouts. It's not decal heavy. I like lots of decals. Not everyone does, but it's not decal heavy. But you've got all the main stuff that you need. Remember, it's 172, so some of these are going to be pretty tiny. Yeah, very nice. We've even got decals that go on top of the roundels, so a lovely job. Right, talking of decals, let's have a look at them. So, we have the usual arrangement of common at the top, and then we've got paint scheme A, paint scheme B. Paint scheme B is the busier one, which is good because I like lots of decals and I'm going to do B. And then we've got this one, which is on its own, so whether that's another common one, I don't know. But there is some tiny decals on there. Millimetre by half a millimetre, some of those. Register looks spot on. Airfix decals are amongst some of the very best. Doesn't say where it's made, but they don't feel thick. I wouldn't be surprised if the cartograph, they tend to use cartograph these days. So yeah, they look lovely. Right then, frame A. We've got engine nacelles, the 2 fuselage halves, and the base of the interior build. And the first thing that stands out is the very, very subtle detail on the interior parts on both sides. Look at the cable runs. They're lovely, really nice. We've got some ejector pin marks as well, but they may not be visible because we've got holes there for a bulkhead. That's really nice. Yeah, some nice detail there. Now, there's not much in the way of markings on the fuselage, but of course she is a wooden aircraft, so there is not much in the way of riveting. It's all glue, and parts of these aircraft were made in furniture shops and all over the place, and then the parts came together. So whereas in Germany they took their aircraft production into caves and took it underground to protect it, in this country certainly with this aircraft, they just dispersed it. And you had all sorts of little craftsmen making these parts, and then they were all being shipped to the assembly lines. Quite a hive of activity right around the country to get these things together. So beautiful fuselage. I can see some detail on there and some Revit detail, and I'm not sure, but I think if you see this ridge here, we'll come back to the inside in a minute. You see this ridge here, it is causing a small amount of sink just along there. I mean, it's really tiny. Whether that will then get hidden under the wing, because it looks like the wing roots come out there, so that might not even be seen. Yeah, and we do have a bit of sink on the tail where the donut fitting is, but that's because this is actually really thin. It's not oversized at all, I'm fairly sure. Some beautiful detail on the engine nacelles. I usually do the close-up at the end, but I just need to show you this. Then if we flip it over, look what you get inside the cockpit area there. That is nice. That is really nice. So we've got cable runs, we've got radio sets and various bits of equipment. You've got all sorts of little knobs and switches and wires. Absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. That is really nice. I don't often say this about kits these days, but that is blowing my socks off a little bit, actually. That is very, very nice indeed. Okay, second frame, frame B, and we've got wing and tail components. And the first thing that strikes you is how thin these are. They are beautifully thin. So let's have a look at the tail. So we noted that it was 2 parts, but you can see here the other section. And that second section just mounts in behind the flaps there. And there is lots of rivet detail. The recessed lines are not too heavy. Airfix do have a bit of a reputation of putting trenches in, but they absolutely haven't with this. Yeah, that's really nice. Detail is lovely and crisp, and actually the plastic feels quite hard. It's not the usual soft plastic, so they have upped their game on this kit. So now we're looking at these the lower wing sections, and you can see the area where they're wanting you to use it as a jig before you mount it in. So really clever thought process there. We're actually going to use these parts, but we're going to use them earlier in the build as a jig. Really nice. And we've got cable runs there, got all sorts of little access hatches. I don't see any sink or flash It's very, very crisp. It's lovely. And the shape of the wing looks really nice as well. The top wing surface, again, no imperfections at all that I can see. Until we get to, yeah. So if you look at the tail, we've got a large tab and a thin tab. So that's to make sure you put them in the right place, I guess. And then these are the two inserts that fit in. And this one here, which is part 3, B3, has a large block on the inside, and that is causing some sink on that part. That will have to be filled. It's quite deep actually. But on the end of the parts there's some beautiful detail. There's no detail there, so it's easy to thin and sort. That's not an issue at all. And then we've got some nice raised detail there on the tail. Look at that, absolutely splendid. Right, I don't need to go any further to tell you this is the nicest 1/72 scale kit to come out of Airfix to date. That is beautiful. Okay, the third sprue is C, and we've got the Bombay there, which looked very detailed in the instructions, and it doesn't disappoint. We've got some subtle detail and we've got some not so subtle detail. All the lumps and bumps that you'd expect are there. Then we've got the ordnance and the separate rings. So those rings probably look a little bit too thick, but that's the limitation of the moulding process. You could possibly put a little bit of plastic card or some etch around it to thin that off if you wished. Then we've got these tanks that we saw going in the underside of the cockpit area. The bulkheads are absolutely covered in detail. The level of detail, it's the sort of detail you'd expect at 148. It is really nice. And then we've got the Bombay door openers, and these are the mounting brackets for the bombs there. So mainly Bombay stuff on C. So it's all been grouped together. So when you're working on this area, it's all grouped together. So that's another nice thing. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. Not much to say on that side. Okay, sprue 4, and we've got more to come, is E. There is no D, strangely. I'm sure there's a reason, but I don't know what that is. And I'm going to start here with these tyres, the weighted tyres, and they are lovely. And in fact, we have 2 of these sprues. So we're on sprue 4 and 5 here in reality, and they're exactly the same as far as I can see. No, I take that back, they're not. So ignore me. Sprue E, we've got the weighted tyres, which look really nice, very nice. And then we've got this really ingenious exhaust system that allows you to get in there with your knife and scrape the seam out. Not that you need to bother, because I can't see any. Now I've only got my reading glasses on, but I can't see any, and it is so wafer thin. It is beautiful. Then we've got parts of the air scoops there, which again absolutely beautiful. As I suspected, the mudguard there is quite heavy. I have no doubt that Edward or someone is going to do an etch replacement, but you could thin that out yourself just by getting some sanding stick in there and thinning it out. But it doesn't look bad at all as it is, in fairness. And then we've got this mask. So you can see here, if you're going to have the gear up, you use this piece. If you're going to have the gear down, you use this as a mask, and you can see the little cutouts, because obviously if you're closing the gear up, then you were cutting those bits off, but you're leaving them on. So if that fits as well as it should, that's a beautiful idea, and I hope they use that again, because I think that's ingenious. And again, everything here is all to do with building up this engine section and the landing gear. And look at the landing gear. Isn't that stunning? You've got lots of fine detail, lots of ejector pins been put on there to make sure they don't have to put anything on the parts. But they could be quite fragile considering that they're in one bag, Mr. Airfix. The spinner is nice. The connection gates are on the propellers, which I'm not a fan of, but it just means you have to be careful with the cleanup. But some nice tiny parts. It's not over heavy in terms of part count, but it's not underdone. They've not cut corners. I like the separate hubs. There's lots to like on there. Right, sprue 5, which they call frame F, is pretty much very similar to what we've just seen. It's all the same components. I'm just trying to compare it now. Yeah, they've arranged it differently for some reason. Okay. No, they haven't. No, they haven't. There you go. They're opposite each other. So they're exactly the same parts in the same places, but they're opposite of each other. So basically they face each other because they're opposed engines, of course. So I don't need to show you that because you've just seen it, but isn't it lovely? So that then takes us to sprue number, I've lost count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sprue 6. So this is the last plastic sprue, coloured plastic sprue, I should say. So 6 sprues for a 172 scale aircraft. That's a bit mad in itself. And this is frame G, and we have all the cockpit area here and the 2 different wheels. So we have a rear bulkhead, dashboard, which is very lightly done. Often I think all the gauges and dials are a little bit heavy, but that's not. The pilot's a bit soft moulded and not particularly crisp. So his facial features aren't clear. Yeah, that's not so brill. We've got another bulkhead there. These are the side pieces of the seat. That's really nice. This was the underneath bulkhead. And it's got all the rivets on. I'll show you in a sec. We've got the landing, the tail wheel, I should say, up and down, the radio box, the bottom of the seat, steering column. The detail on that. And you can see there that the wheel's been shaped to fit when it's in the up position. And there's the pilot. Okay, right, the last lot of parts, and yeah, these are beautifully clear. Even before we dip them in Humbrol gloss clear, these are absolutely beautiful. So we've got 2 different types of canopy, one with the bulge. Then we've got the side pieces. Again, we've got 2 different styles. So that means we've got more models coming. And they're lovely and clear. Then we've got the wing tips. And absolutely, I mean, they're faultless. absolutely faultless. And then the front, the nose piece, which has absolutely no, yeah, I mean that's just from the front on, looking through that front screen, it is absolutely perfect, no distortion. In fact, I can't see any distortion in any of this. Then we've got the other nose glazings and tail, that glazed area for underneath, and what looks like some form of wing light or something. I don't remember seeing that in the instructions. But they are beautifully clear. Stunning. Okay, so what are my first impressions? Well, right at the start of this video, I said, has Airfix turned the wooden wonder into a plastic wonder? So let's answer that question. Yeah, they absolutely have. That is spectacular. Highlights, we've got the plastic mask, we've got the way the exhausts are put together, thinking about clean up and ease of construction. You've got the jigs for building the landing gear. You've got a bomb bay, open or closed with ordnance. I can't think of a 172 scale aircraft of this size that has an opening bomb bay. I can't think of one. The level of detail on the visible surfaces is really, really good. The plastic is not soft. It's a nice hard plastic, will be nice and easy to work with. The clear parts are crystal clear. Lots and lots of highlights to this kit. You've got weighted tyres, you've got which are with separate hubs. Absolutely considered how the modeler wants to build and ease of building. Now, this is the same designer as the Spitfire that came out last year, and my 8-year-old daughter managed to build that even with the small fiddly parts and paint it as per the instructions, and she came out with a model that looked absolutely stunning. The only thing she struggled a little bit with was the decals, which were a little bit beyond her for her age, but the actual construction of the kit and painting it, she took in her stride, and that spurred her on to, I'm going to do another Airfix kit. I can't see her having any issues with this. But what was it, 112 steps? They take you through it very, very clearly, logically, slowly. You can't put a foot wrong if you follow the instructions carefully. Low lights. I think there was one bit of sync that needed filling, and the definition of the pilot could be a lot better. Probably going to be chucking the pilot and either replacing or just not bothering. The other thing that's missing is seat harnesses. They're not moulded on, so I guess Airfix are relying on Edward to come steaming in with some seat harnesses, which would just finish off the cockpit. But you can't take anything away from them. I'm sat here trying to think of a 172 scale aircraft that I would like to compare it to and say it's nearly as good as. The problem is I can't think of another 172 scale aircraft that is nearly as good as this one. This is an outstanding kit, and I'm actually going to do something that I don't usually do. I recommend, if you like the Mosquito, that you go and buy it, because that is beautiful. It is properly, obviously the proof is in the building, but I haven't had an issue with building an Airfix kit for a good few years now. The fit is really, really good. It's all done on CAD. The tolerances are great. The manufacturing processes are better. This plastic is harder. There was no flash. Didn't look like there was any cleanup. Just go and buy one. Just go and buy one. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I hope that was helpful, informative. If you haven't built an Airfix kit for a little while, maybe this is your excuse. Okay, take care everyone. I will see you very soon.